Good day everyone, I'm Shikana Joel Ortega of BSBM1A, your presenter for today about the part of Mr. Andresito Acuña's book Philosophical Analysis, which is about Unit 2, Analysis of Knowledge Claims, and today I'm going to tackle two modules, which is Module 1, about Analysis of Statements, and Module 3, Types of Knowledge Claims. So without further ado, let's get started. Module 1, Analysis of Statements. Before we proceed to our main topic, we will start first with something you've already familiar with, type of sentences. Let us remember the different types of sentences we've learned in high school. What are your plans for today? What is your name? When we ask these questions, what type of sentence do you use? Correct! You're using interrogative sentence. Shut the door. Wash the dinner plates. When we are using these commands, what are we using? Imperative sentence, correct. However, when we express these lines like, "You were amazing! What a game!" we know that we are using, that's right, we are using exclamatory sentences. When we express a desire or wish such as, "I hope my business succeeds. I hope I pass my Philo1 subject this semester." What type of sentences are these? Correct, expletive sentences. Let's keep this type of sentences in mind because it will be helpful for our discussion today. One of the most important use of language is asserting a knowledge claim with a sentence. And in today's linguistic conventions, the linguistic barrier of knowledge is commonly referred to as the proposition or a statement. We are all aware that interrogative, imperative, exclamatory, and expletive sentences are simply uttered. What do you mean by that? Itong klase ng mga pangungusap na ito ay sinasabi lang sila. Hindi natin pinagtatalunan kung totoo ba yung in-state na sentence o hindi, because they do not have truth values. Let me give you an example. Kapag inutusan kitang clean your room, this command is neither true or false kahit na hindi mo sinunod ang utos ko. Hindi siya mali. The command is not falsified. When it comes to using declarative sentences to assert or deny something in the world that can be either true or false, like my dog is black or that girl is 10 years old, is different case. We know that we have to use declarative sentences to make a knowledge claim, and we know as well that the proposition or statement is the linguistic barrier of knowledge claim. This use of declarative sentences is to assert a knowledge claim is very important not only in logic, but in epistemology as well. Moving on with the sentence and statements, in Unit 1, we found out the difference between a word and a concept. For the pedagogical purpose, a word is made up of letters, and a concept is made up of ideas. We also know that a sentence is made up of words. However, what we are not so familiar with is the view that the statement, which is the bearer of knowledge claims, is made up of concepts. Concepts as well as statements are constructs. Ito ang mga convenient linguistic devices na inimbento ng mga philosophers para makagawa ng important distinctions o yung difference o contrast between similar things or people. The uses of these constructs are made stable by stipulative definitions of philosophers playing the same language game. So, sa konseptong dog, hindi yung dog itself. Pwede ma-express ito sa iba't ibang salita but in the same language. A great example is canine. It can be used to express the same concept of dog. We can also use another language to express the concept of dog, which is in Filipino, aso. So, similarly, the knowledge claim the cat is on the mat can be expressed by another sentence in the same language. Like, the cat is on the mat. We can use it from other word like, the cat is on top of the mat. The mat has a cat on top. And sa Filipino, ang pusa ay nasa ibabaw ng bani. Let's have another example. The philosophy books are in the drawer. It can be expressed by another sentence in the same language like, the philosophy books are inside the drawer. The drawer has philosophy books in it. And sa Filipino, ang mga libro sa filosofiya ay nasa kahon. Consequently, we can have many terms, not necessarily in the same language, expressing the same concept, and similarly, we can have many sentences, not necessarily in the same language, expressing the knowledge claim. This is an important linguistic convention among philosophers of language. The use of a declarative sentence to assert a knowledge claim marks an important distinction in philosophy. The philosopher must confront an age-old problem of the relationship between language and the world. This problem has bugged philosophers since the beginning of time. The term proposition rather than statement is preferred by some philosophers and logicians. They do agree, however, that the truth and falsehood are properties of statements expressed by sentences on certain occasions, in order to make a knowledge claim about what is true or what is not true. But in any case, statement and proposition are used almost synonymously. When we actually use a sentence to make a knowledge claim by asserting or denying something in the world, this occasion constitutes the making of a statement. Many philosophers accept the sentences could not be true or false because a single sentence often contains two or more statements or knowledge claims. Therefore, it is important to discriminate between the sentence and the statement if you want to play the language game of the philosophers when they conduct philosophical analysis. It is said that a sentence is made up of words, so obviously it is material, but what about the statement it expresses? Statements like concepts are philosophers' constructs. The construct, on the other hand, is necessary to philosophers to analyze the truth values of statements and, more importantly, to assess an argument. Let me also repeat that in the literature of philosophy of language and logic, the term proposition is sometimes suggested instead of statement. These two are not exactly identical, but they are very similar. Next, how do we analyze the truth values of statements? The sentence "the cat is on the mat" is a declarative sentence that can express that the cat is on the mat. You can succeed in expressing this statement provided that there is actually a mat and a cat in this world. Also, the state of affairs that the cat is on the mat actually obtains. What does it mean when the state of affairs is obtained? It indicates that something occurs or it is true. It's also observable or provable through senses. If you were able to prove these 2 points, you have successfully used a sentence to assert a knowledge claim that you are verified is true. But if the case is that there is no a mat and if there is a cat, but the state of affairs that the cat is on the mat does not obtain, meaning hindi totoo na may cat doon sa mat, then you have succeeded in verifying that the knowledge claim is false. However, if there is no cat and there is no mat, you have no even succeeded in expressing a knowledge claim at all. The use of nonverbal reality like the state of affairs is the fountainhead of many important concepts and many theories in philosophy. The nonverbal reality is a method in determining the truth value of a knowledge claimed by an appeal to something external to it. Moving on, there are 3 principles that govern the analysis of the truth value statement. According to the former logicians, Aristotle, who's an Asian philosopher, referred to them as the 3 laws of thought. The first law is called the principle of identity, which states that if a statement is true, then it is true. Alternatively, the converse, if the statement is false, then it is false. This means that the truth value of a statement is stable over time. If we try to analyze it using a formula, many may say that it will be P is equals P. But the formula P is equals P speaks of equality. It doesn't define P as the same. So what the principle of identity is actually trying to say is that P is P, which means that every P is itself the same. An example will be the statement of a non-venomous snake is not poisonous. If you will evaluate this statement, fear of poisonous bite from a non-venomous snake is irrational and wrong, because non-venomous snakes cannot have venom. Another one is when you conclude that the statement all bachelors are unmarried. Unmarried men is correct. The statement's truth value is retained indefinitely over time. This of course assumes that the verbal convention regarding the use of the concept bachelor has remained unchanged. Kasi, ang statement hindi pwedeng totoo siya sa kasalukuyan and with the blink of an eye, it turns out to be false. This will create havoc or chaos in the logic. In short, the principle of identity is only applicable to a world that is constant, regular, and unchanging. Next is the principle of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction states that it is not possible for a statement to be true and false at the same time in the exact same manner. Sa non-contradiction naman, hindi pwedeng maging true and false ang isang statement. If you follow up a statement with something that contradicts it, that verifies that one of the sentences is actually false, they make your statement seem weak and questionable and makes you look like that you don't know what you're talking about. Pero guys, don't confuse about the principle of non-contradiction sa concept ng inconsistency. Although they are quite similar and they may have similar effects. They do have quite the fundamental difference. And para mas maintindihan natin, here is the example. Mark was a real person. He never existed. Think about that for a moment. Those sentences are contradictory. We should note that the first sentence is affirmative while the second one is denial. Kapag ang isa sa kanila ay true, then automatically, false na yung isa. If Mark never existed, then of course, he is not the real person. And if he was a real person, then he existed, which disproves the latter assumptions. Ngayon, tingnan natin ang isang example. Levi is blonde. His hair is color brown. Those sentences are inconsistent, and yes, kung totoo yung isa, dapat false na yung isa. Pero paano kung parehas ay mali? Sa sentence natin, si Levi ay black hair. So, parehas silang mali. Hindi siya blonde and hindi rin siya brown. Ito ang main difference ng principle of non-contradiction and inconsistency. In contradictory statements, if the affirmative is true, the denial is always false. If the affirmative is false, then the denial is always true. Only one of them is true and it is required that one of them is true. On the other hand, inconsistency statements, even though both can't be true, at the same time, just like contradictory statements, both can be false just like in our example. And lastly is the principle of excluded middle, which states that there are only two truth values, true or false and nothing else. In other words, it has only two truth values. For example, let's talk about the belief. Auguste Comte argued for the importance of identifying scientific laws that govern human behavior. There are only two possible truth values. It's either true or false. There's no in between. They cannot be true and false at the same time. This principle is called the principle of the excluded middle because it excludes the presumed third value, which is the probability. Probability is the likeness of something to happen, to be true, or to occur, and it can be expressed in numerical values. And now we're going to proceed to Module 3, which is the types of knowledge claim. This module will center to the epistemological classification of knowledge claims, which is needed in order to internalize complex and sophisticated abilities in argument composition. Morris Schlick and the logical positivists of the 1930s established a theory of knowledge based on David Hume's epistemology. They embrace Hume's epistemological framework, which states that there are only two sources of knowledge. First is reason and second is perception. So there is only two sources of knowledge. They can conclude that there can only be two types of knowledge, which are the following. First is formal language under the faculty of reason and the empirical language from the five senses of perception. In the language of Hume, formal knowledge is intuitively and demonstratively certain. Common examples for formal knowledge comes from logic, mathematics, algebra, and geometry. On the other hand, empirical knowledge comes from natural and social sciences like physics, biology, sociology, psychology, and etc. All knowledge claims according to logical positivists can only be formal or empirical. This was the basic epistemological framework proposed by Hume, which was accepted and developed by logical positivists into a full-blown theory of knowledge. Although nawawala yung credibility ng mga logical positivists sa field ng philosophy, ginagamit pa rin itong distinction na ito sa sciences hanggang ngayon. The division of the sciences into formal and empirical is still reflected in the epistemological framework developed by the logical positivist. To sum it all up, formal knowledge will be guaranteed by the faculty of reason, whereas empirical knowledge will be guaranteed by the faculty of sense perception. Therefore, we can only have two types of knowledge claims, namely formal and empirical. In Acuña's book, it is stated that the bifurcation between the two types of knowledge claims led to the bifurcation of only two epistemological types of meaningful statements, which are the analytic statements and the empirical statements. When formal knowledge claim is made, it is made by using an analytic statement. Examples are, a square has two equal sides. If Cain killed Abel, then a bell is dead. On the other hand, when an empirical knowledge claim is made, the claim is made using an empirical statement. Examples are, dinosaurs once populated the earth. All things fall down. Remember that in current epistemology, empirical claims and empirical statements are almost synonymously used. Also, formal claim and analytical statements are also used synonymously, so we shall adapt the same linguistic convention. So yung dichotomy or division sa relationship of ideas and matter of fact led to the bifurcation of the two theories of truth. This means that we verify an empirical claim by the use of correspondence, theory of truth, and we verify a formal claim by the use of coherence theory of truth. What does this mean? When we say correspondence theory of truth, this is the use of 5 sentences to verify empirical claims, while the coherence theory of truth is the use of faculty of reason when verifying an analytical claims. Mas may explain ito when you reach Module 5 Theories of Truth. You must know how to identify knowledge claims based on epistemic characteristics. This would pave the way for you to apply any theories of truth that you choose. Actually, empirical claims are easy to recognize, identify, and utter. Simply describing yourself, your classmates, or other people, and you can also describe your surroundings too. By doing these things, gumamit ka ng declarative sentence to assert an empirical knowledge. Kailangan mo lang i-make sure that what you are using or what you are asserting or denying exists in the world. Examples are the following. I am wearing a pink blouse today. Some of my classmates are wearing eyeglasses. The Junicio family has 2 dogs. Kung mapapansin nyo sa mga ginamit na examples ay matutukoy dito yung truth or falsehood ng mga claims sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng one or a combination of your 5 senses. Ibig sabihin, gumagamit ka ng correspondence theory of truth. You know what observations you are going to make in order to determine the truth or the falsity of the empirical claims above. And now, pag-uusapan naman natin yung analytical claims. An analytical claims, ang definition niya ay, an analytical statement is a statement in which the truth value is determined by the meanings of its terms. Base sa reading, it states that puppies are young dog. Seems like an empirical observation. After all, you can perceive it with your sense of sight, kaya mo nasabi na young dog ang puppy kasi maliit siya and hindi pa siya fully na-develop gaya ng ibang aso. However, if we analyze it further, we can see that it is actually a claim that the word puppy refers to a young dog which is not fully grown or matured. The word literally means young dogs and ginamit yon if we are referring to young dogs. So puppies are young dogs. According to Immanuel Kant, an analytic statement contains the predicate in the subject. Examples: bachelors are unmarried men. Fathers are male parents. Pretty obvious, di ba? Unless hindi mo alam ang meaning ng bachelor or father. Basta ang point is, the predicate is contained in the subject. The predicate is basically give definition to the subject, and that definition can be found in the subject itself. Humes described those definitions as intuitively and demonstratively certain. Would you say bachelors are married? Of course not, kasi that would be contradictory to the meaning of the word bachelor itself. How to verify the truth in analytic statements? First, we check if the terms that encapsulate the concepts of father or bachelor are used in the same way. The language defines it in many language games. This is called cohesion theory. Second, if something passes the cohesion check, it is true. All denials could then be considered false. Humes also said that the statement is analytic if the denial leads to contradiction or absurdity. Ngayon, paano naman kapag sinabi natin na all bachelors are unhappy? First of all, isa itong generalization pero hindi siya analytic statement dahil isa siyang empirical observation kasi hindi naman directly connected ang unhappiness sa concept ng bachelorhood. It is something lang na na-observe mo through your senses. And as you probably get by now, the paradigm of analytic statements come from formal systems. The truth of a analytic statement, comes from its adherence to a system. Dun sa example kanina, adherence to a linguistic system, pero hindi lang siya limited dun. Pero even mathematical systems and others like this example. 4 plus 4 is equals to 8. It adheres to arithmetic system and can be referred to as well from formula or WFR. And that is example of analytic statement. Next is tautology. It is a statement that is necessarily true. It can also be the same thing said twice. For example, she was so excited. She could hardly contain her enthusiasm. The weather was hot and it was scorching. So sa examples, makikita na natin na dun pa lang sa definition niya na sinasabi na it could be the same thing said twice. She was so excited, and then makikita rin sa action niya that she could hardly contain her enthusiasm. Next. There is also a controversy surrounding the number of types of meaningful statements because arrogant logical positivists argue that there are only two, empirical and analytical. They say that when you have no means or method to verify a statement and it cannot be verified, it is meaningless. However, marami ring philosophers ang hindi masaya with this idea because by using that kind of logic, legal, political, moral, ethical, aesthetic, and religious statements are meaningless. And dumako naman tayo sa status of evaluative claims. Humes is someone who does not agree with the idea that there are only two meaningful types of statements, because for him, evaluative claims are not meaningless. Evaluative claims are judgments of value or disvalue. According sa kanya, the source of this judgment is passion and emotion. They are genuine impressions that lead to ideas. For him, passion and emotions can be considered the anchor for a third source of knowledge. So next is the examples of status evaluative claims. Moral statements, sex without is immoral. Religious statements, polygamy is a sin. Static statements, sunset is beautiful. Like empirical statements, you can also affirm or deny the validity, authenticity, truth, value of the statements previously mentioned. However, you use a different source of knowledge or methodology than what you would do in an analytic or empirical statement. There is also a variation of evaluative statements that deal with obligations or prohibitions. They are called prescriptive for positive and proscriptive for negative. Example, you or you should not kind of statements like do not cheat on your exams, and don't forget to pay your bills. To decide the theory of truth you are going to apply, you must first decide the type of knowledge claim you wish to verify. So, to sum up, empirical is the corresponds theory of truth, analytic is the coherence theory of truth, and evaluative, strength of public approval or senses of the public, also passion and emotions. And that's all. Thank you!